Hello, welcome to Guanyin Practice for our week of honoring gratitude in the United States. It's a politically complicated week. It's a personally complicated time in the world, and yet making space for gratitude is never a bad idea. We actually don't even need to attach it to just like one particular holiday. We could just cultivate gratitude all year round. However, I love the idea that there's a time each year where our collective attention in this country is called to gratitude and to um, having that space to celebrate with family and friends and have warmth and have connection. And at the same time, it's a complicated world and a complicated time. And I'm very grateful to read that there's going to be a ceasefire, that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire for 4 days, an exchange of captives, etc. And I also just want it to end. I want it to end. And I hope it's an open door to that conflict ending. And I am also have been little update doing all of the kitten rescue. And now we've got homes for almost everybody. And we've got almost everybody neutered. And, it's all happening. So that part's really great. And thank you to everyone who donated yesterday so that Gene could go to the vet. They ran some tests. They gave him antibiotics. They bandaged him up. Hopefully, it will be okay. But he had some stuff going on, and so that goes beyond that toe. So it was really good that we got him in, and hopefully, he'll heal fast. We'll know more in about a week when the results of this work come back. Morning, Kathleen. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for acknowledging. It's like its own reward to love these kittens and cats out here and get them into homes. And the 2 cats that we had neutered yesterday are going to be our barn cats, and things are going well with all the world of the cats today. So let's get into it. We're in the month of Santa Muerte in the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple, and we are honoring that liminal space and time right now in the waning of the year, the waning of the light in the northern hemisphere. We're honoring that liminal space where the ancestors reside. So even though Samhain is closed and the season of the ancestors is kind of behind us in that sense, this portal is really open until the turn of the year, until the return of the sun at solstice. We are in that gloaming, that in between time. So we call on Santa Muerte and we thank her. We thank her for all the times when we might not even have known how close we came to death, and yet we were preserved. We were protected. We lived another day to tell the tale. Let's give thanks for that. And let's also give thanks for the ability to, wherever we are, find community, friendship, good people, people who we can connect with, collaborate with, people who love us. It's such a gift to have it. And it's a gift to be that to someone. So if you know someone who's alone this holiday, or if you know that there's someone who's suffering, maybe think about tomorrow reaching out to just say a little note. I'm thankful for you, thinking of you today, wishing you well, because we can be that energy of thankfulness and gratitude for someone who needs it. So let's honor Santa Muerte with a song, and then we'll draw her card. Madre mía, Santa Muerte, ante las dificultades de la vida, ayúdame. En mis desaciertos, ilumíname. En mis soledades, acompáñeme. En las horas difíciles, fortaléceme. En más tentaciones, defiéndeme. En las peñas y tristezas, consuélame. Con tu inmenso poder, protégeme. Con tu infinito amor, ámame. Con tu gran bondad, mírame. Con tu mano providente, guíame. Así sea por siempre. Amen. We are working with the Jade Oracle with artwork by Ramona Snow Teo and writing by Veronica Iglesias and Ann Key. It's a really beautiful deck featuring deities and cultural concepts of Mesoamerica, particularly the Aztec people, but even that's complicated. There's so many different indigenous identities within Mexico, and even under the banner of what was known as Aztec, there's variation. So it's a beautiful pan Mesoamerican deck. Our card today, Coyolxauhqui. Coyolxauhqui. She who is adorned with bells. Coyolxauhqui. The story of Coyolxauhqui consists of a very beautiful yet somewhat grim series of events that poignantly shows personal and possibly cultural destruction. We do not have the original story, we only have the Catholic interpretation of the indigenous myth. Taking place during the Aztec migration, the story involves Coyolxauhqui, her mother Coatlicue, and her brother Huitzilopochtli. During the migration from Aztlan, the Aztec people settled briefly at Coatepec, the hill of the snake. One day, the primordial mother Coatlicue, she of the serpent skirt, was sweeping the temple. She found a bundle of precious feathers, picked them up, and kept them underneath her clothes. These feathers made her pregnant. According to the Spanish cleric's interpretation, this mysterious pregnancy embarrassed her children, the Senson Huitznahua, or the Southern Stars, the 400 brothers, and embarrassed her daughter, Coyolxauhqui. The brothers and sisters decided to kill their mother. But when they arrived at Coatepec, Coatlicue had already given birth to her son, Huitzilopochtli, who was born in full battle armor. Huitzilopochtli decapitated Coyolxauhqui as well as the 400 brothers, throwing their bodies down the hill where they smashed into pieces. Coyolxauhqui became the moon, and the 400 brothers became the stars. In this story, Huitzilopochtli can be understood as the sun, and the battle is interpreted as the sunlight of day overcoming the night and washing out the light of the stars and the moon. In another interpretation, Huitzilopochtli has been characterized as the patriarchy, and the battle resulted in the destruction of the matrifocal culture led by Coyolxauhqui. Coyolxauhqui appears in your life when you feel broken into pieces. The system has pushed you to your limits. You feel unable to continue for fear of community or social reprisals. She represents that moment when you feel that the love and care of your mother has disappeared, leaving you orphaned. You feel the depths of loneliness, isolation, sadness, disappointment, and fear. This is a time to allow yourself to experience your emotions. The healing will come. So a really interesting story of loss, and I really appreciate this. One of the things I love about this deck is that the authors, Veronica and Anne, they're such conscious, thoughtful women. They actually went in and they deeply researched all of these myths, and they really point to when all we have is an interpretation of a myth through the lens of, say, the colonizing or conquering or missionary forces, we're missing a big part of the cultural locus from which that myth arises. Instead, we're seeing the myth as rendered through the eyes of someone who isn't fundamentally a part of the society or the culture. And so, just the same way as, for example, here in the United States, we know about like John Wayne movies. Probably most of us think of them as kind of like antiquated, like out of date. This is kind of like an old myth, that we have of the cowboy kind of culture. There's a lot of problems in it, but it's entertaining, whatever. But when you go sometimes to other countries where all they know of America is the John Wayne myth, they expect that you're carrying a gun. They expect that you own horses. They expect that you live out in the desert. They expect that you have a ranch. There's like a paradigm that goes along with a myth that sometimes gets lost in translation. So what we know of this myth of Coyolxauhqui is that she is the moon, her brothers are the stars, her other brother is the sun, and that there's this idea of like the sun and the sun toppling the moon and the stars and them like rolling down a hill breaking into pieces. But there's another locus here that isn't necessarily described in the card, but that would make sense, is that the Aztecs believed that, of course, as many ancient peoples believed, that there was like an upper world and then an underworld, and that the sun moved and the moon moved, and that souls and bodies also moved. So, for example, when someone would die, they would be buried, and then it was believed that Mictacatzihuatl, who's like the Aztec mother of death, sometimes associated with Santa Muerte, although that's also complicated. But it was believed that the spirit of the dead and their body would go to Mictlan, the realm of the dead, where the Lord of Death, Mictlan Tecutli, would be there, and he would ferry the soul on its journey, and Mictacatzihuatl would ferry the bones on their journey under the ground, and that then those bones would later become the material from which a new body was made. And so the Aztecs had a tradition of burying and unburying their dead. So they'd bury their dead, and then they would dig them up and parade them around and dress them and then bury them again. And it was part of this mythos that there is this two worlds. And so that you can bring bodies and beings back and forth between the two worlds. And that they also believed that the sun and the moon, the stars, the earth, everything was subject to this two worlds. So there's the world that we live in right now, and then there's this world where we're journeying. And that the sun would be coming and chasing the moon and the stars into the underworld, or into that lower world, and then the moon and the stars would come and chase the sun away, and that they were constantly chasing each other. Sometimes in our lives, we are chasing our own tails. We are taking that moment, that a painful moment, a complicated moment, a moment of grief and loss, and we're chasing it around and around and around in our minds. And we feel like somehow that's going to get us somewhere, especially when we're trying to deconstruct the past, to take it apart, to chew it over, to ruminate over it, to chase it around and around, as if somehow what we know now could go back and conquer what we didn't know, our ignorance of that moment, or the good fortune that we have now could go back and ameliorate the pain of the past. Or sometimes we think, if only I'd made that different decision there, and now we're stuck in this moment, reliving that again and again and again, wishing. And you really can't go back and change the past. There's nothing that can be done. There's no way to change it, fix it, adjust it. It just is what it is. Chasing our own tails about it isn't going to help, but we do have to let ourselves feel the feelings in order to heal from those feelings. So today, as we're preparing for this moment, this season of gratitude, let's feel the feelings. Let's let ourselves feel the feelings and not chase our own tails around, and not ruminate so much on the past that we're re-traumatizing ourselves or we're breaking ourselves. We don't need to do that. We can have compassion for the past. We can allow the past to die. We don't need to relive it over and over and over and over. And obviously, counseling, therapy, hypnotherapy, psychiatry, and other modalities out of healing out there are there to help us with that. But I can't speak to those. I'm not in any of those fields. But as a healer, as a spiritual healer, I can say, I do believe that we can have magical moments, spiritual awakenings and epiphanies, incredible moments where everything changes and whatever that harm or hurt was just sort of melts away. And when we have those moments, let's lift a heart filled with gratitude. Today, let's give ourselves permission to spiritually and magically let go. All right, that's our short bit for today, if that's what you were here for. Now let's get into practice. We're going to begin, as always, with 3 prostrations before the shrine of Guanyin. And let's take refuge. Namo Guru Be. I take refuge in the inner teacher. Namo Buddhaye. I take refuge in the great mother of compassion. Namo Dharmaye. I take refuge in the wisdom of the ages. Namo Sanghaye. I take refuge in the community of practitioners. And let's set our intention, a person, place, situation, or circumstance that will benefit from today's practice. I'd like to ask us to hold Graybeard and Kevin, who are recovering from their neuters, and little Jean and Ace, who are getting, dewormed in their, Jean's little paw and everything going on with them. And let's recite the four immeasurables. May I be a source of loving kindness in this world and all worlds, bringing a generous heart to all my thoughts and doings. May I be a vehicle of compassion in this world and all worlds, ever mindful and aware of the tremendous suffering of others. May I be a brimming vessel of joy in this world and all worlds, delighting in the happiness of others as their suffering is alleviated. May I be a balance point of equanimity in this world and all worlds, seeing all as equals and all as deserving of goodness. I light this candle as a symbol of the enlightening Dharma way. May it shine brightly for the benefit of all beings. I light this incense as an offering for Guan Xiyin, she who hears the cries of the world, mother of all. Om Ahum. 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 Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and virtual. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the meditation of all holy and ordinary beings. Please, Guanyin, remain until the end of samsaric existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of others to the great enlightenment. 108 recitations of Namo Guanxian Pusa, calling out to Guanyin and inviting her to come into our hearts and to reveal those broken or wounded places. Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa, 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 Namo Guanxin 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 Pusa. And the prayer for the Mani Reciter of Calm by Gyaltse Tokme Zangpo. Lama Dankun Chuksum Lak Chaksalo, Dakni Changchuk Nimpur Chikebar, Gangdang Gangdu Kepa de Dangder, Tadu Tuje Champo Jetsen Shing, Gusum Gewe Chila Chapar Sho, Jamdang Ningje, Jamdang Ningje Champo Kunlang Ne, Tuje Champo Dulchar Girpanam, Lame Changchu Chola Gope Chir, Tuje Champo Trinle Jepar Sho. Homage to the Guru and Three Jewels. Wherever I may be reborn, in that place may I always follow the great compassionate one and dedicate my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Inspired by loving kindness in order to lead all Mahakarunika's followers to supreme and unsurpassable awakening, may I carry out the great compassionate one's activity. Lama Dankun Shuksum Lakchaksalo, Dakni Changchuk Nimpur Chike Bar, Gangdang Gangu Kepa de Dangder, Tadu Tuje Champo Chetzin Shing, Gusum Gewe Chula Chapar Sho, Jamdang Ningje, Champo Gunlangne, Tuje Champo Duljar Girpanam, Lame Changchu Chola Gope Chir, Tuje Champo Trinle Jepar Sho. And now 108 recitations of Om Mani Padme Hum, sending out our compassion to those in need today, to those who feel broken, to those who are ruminating on past hurts or past mistakes or losses, to those who are feeling dread about the holiday season. Let's send it out. A balm for their hearts. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 And let's give thanks for our teachers. May all of my blessed teachers enjoy long, happy, healthy, productive lives and great support for their good works. May all beings benefit from their wisdom. May they enjoy a swift and happy rebirth. And long life prayer for Lama Dechen Yeshe Wangmo. Om Sosti. Through the powerful blessings of the immortal Pema Chöngye and his consort, may the three secret qualities of the Dakini of Supreme Bliss Yeshe Wangmo be utterly stable, and may the light of her activities shine on the lotus groves of the teachings and of beings so that they blossom in radiant splendor. And let's dedicate the merit. May the merit of this practice and all of my activities be of endless benefit to all beings in all realms, beginningless and continuous. May all obstacles be overcome and suffering cease at the sound of liberation. May all beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all beings have happiness and its causes. May we carry the essence of Guanyin in our hearts. Namo Guanxin Pusa. And we close with a bow to Guanyin, a bow to one another, and a bow to the inner teacher. Wishing everyone a really good day. I will be back tomorrow for Thanksgiving edition of of morning chanting. So see you then. Bye.